Hi, Yomi Lover here. Just wanted to talk about a film that I went to go see last week called Wonka. Now, I had to prove a bunch of people wrong from a server that I was in. They kept calling it Wanker, saying that Timothée Chalamet can't act, all this other stuff that I honestly had to prove wrong because I needed to see the film for myself to decide whether or not it was bad or not. Now, there are a few gripes that I have about this film. One thing is that I like about the film is that it's a musical. I like musicals. And honestly, if you didn't grow up with musicals in your life, you obviously don't have any passion in life. But, if you did, then, you know how enjoyable they actually are. And how fun they are. And honestly, I think the songs in this movie were actually pretty good. Well choreographed. And the story goes with Wonka is Wonka finds himself in debt as soon as he makes it into this new town. And he ends up having to work off his debt and earn enough money to pay it off as soon as he gets there. But he's stopped by what is the chocolate cartel, which are a bunch of elitists in the chocolatier business that are basically, they have Slugworth in there from the previous Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory film. And they basically keep bribing off the police officers and the cops and everything to try and keep Wonka at bay and keep him from selling his chocolate. And he ends up selling his chocolate anyways, despite their efforts to stop him. But he meets a friend that he calls, Noodle, because she has a ring that has like an N on it. But, we find out later on in the film that it actually stands for Z, for Zepparelli, I think. And she ends up being like a kid that is part of this vast fortune that apparently she, is from because her family members wanted to keep her in a, basically, I don't know, not a sweatshop, but like an apartment complex that just rinses clothes all day. So, she ends up being a special child, but this movie is directed by the director of Paddington, I believe. And at the time that I'm making this video, it has already grossed $200 million, and that's pretty good for a film. Honestly, if anybody hasn't seen this film, they're probably gonna get a lot more joy out of it by just watching the film, going in cold turkey, not knowing what it's about. And I would say this film is good for kids and adults as well. It's not just made for kids because, yeah, I mean, it's kind of aimed at that age group, but it's also aimed at, like, older adults and teenagers and stuff, and it's a film for anybody. Like, that's what I like about these films, is that films made like this are made for anybody to watch, and not, pander to just one selective group. I mean, a lot of people that I understand that go into this film being like, oh, it's not the same as, Gene Wilder's version of the chocolatier Willy Wonka. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, nothing can compare to the Gene Wilder version of it. That movie always has a special place in my heart. But honestly, Chalamet does a good job here. I think he gave it his all when they were directing. And he obviously is proud of the project because he keeps showing it off on his Twitter, keeps talking about it, and keeps saying, hey, who went to go watch Wonka? Anybody go watch Wonka this weekend? And, that passion really shows because obviously the movie is a hit, and it's pretty good. My only gripe about it is that they make Wonka's character illiterate, He can't read. And then I'm looking at the Gene Wilder version, I'm like, wait a second, if this is supposed to be a prequel to Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, why can't he read? Because obviously we see Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka reading in that movie. He reads Charlie's contract that he had all set up for him for if he was going to inherit his vast fortune and Chocolate Factory and all this other stuff. But, is basically testing Charlie and all this stuff. But, that aspect of the film is missing from it because they're just making a prequel movie that tells an origin story of Wonka. And it's zany, it's, silly, it's it's upbeat, all this other stuff. And I guess the character was like that, but, you always saw Wonka as like this lone, secluded recluse that just left everything and built a chocolate factory, fired all his workers, hired Oompa Loompas, all this other stuff. And that's what's such a mystery of the character. And in the fact that he hasn't, like, he's like one of those guys that hasn't shown all his cards at the betting table, you know? So that's why it doesn't feel the same when we're seeing Chalamet act on this film. But there were a lot of good songs in it, and I think anybody who's a musical buff would enjoy this film, because it scratches that itch that, you know, musical theater kids probably have. But honestly, I didn't hate the film. When I watched it, I saw it as a complete story. It felt like a complete story of its own origin. And that's the kind of movie that is rare nowadays, because everything's either part of a franchise, part of an epic universe, all this other stuff, and then you just have this movie that it's its own animal, you know? And you just go in cold turkey and enjoy it. But anyways, I mean, it wasn't as complex as, say, The Boy and the Heron. The Boy and the Heron is a big, complex movie. It has so many visual metaphors from Miyazaki, I can't even explain them. But the movie was really good, too. I mean, when you uncover the meaning of what Miyazaki's trying to say in that film, and what he's trying to convey to his audience and talk about. But I'm not here to talk about The Boy and the Heron and Miyazaki. I'm here to talk about Wonka. And if you're somebody who is just going to the theater casually, looking for something that isn't tied to a franchise, isn't, you know, really big, you're gonna find it in this movie. So that's all I wanted to say about the Wonka movie. If anybody went to go see it, I think it's pretty good. The marketing that they did too, outside of the film, like, for instance, I went to go to Cookie Crumble, and they were serving a Wonka cookie. And that's pretty good marketing, to be honest. If they marketed more food attached to movies, I would definitely go and see the film and see it. They did the same thing with Good Burger, too, but I didn't like Good Burger, but Good Burger was just like, it was okay. But this movie should have had more marketing to it. Maybe marketed chocolate bars, for instance. That would have really made the film. Oh yeah, and the thing about this film, too, is that Wonka's mom plays a big part in his life, in his becoming a chocolatier. And even though my boy can't read, he goes after his passion because his mother wanted him to make it on his own, and she wanted to be there at the end when he succeeded. And she never was because, I don't know, something happened to Wonka's mom. But it's actually a really sweet film. And, you know, at the end of the film, it says in the chocolate bar that she left to him that the best thing that chocolate is enjoyed with the people, the most important thing is that the chocolate is enjoyed with the people you share it with. And that's what matters most, not the chocolate itself. And I guess Wonka was trying to learn that lesson throughout the film. But honestly, he obviously made a bunch of friends throughout this film, and that's actually pretty, you know, heartwarming. That's upbeat. And I think we should give a hats off to the director of Paddington for making this movie as cheerfully upbeat as he could. Honestly. So, that's all I wanted to say about the film. If you haven't seen it yet, you know, you could watch this review and see if you like it or not, but I honestly enjoyed the film. So, that's all I have to say. Peace.